Starfield is the first brand new Bethesda IP in years. Is one they've been talking about for ages as well, and is one I was genuinely quite excited for. After all, I've been playing Bethesda games most of my life, and I still have fond memories of playing Morrowind with my cousin on my grandmother's PC. With neither of us having strong enough understanding of the game mechanics or English to really follow the story, so we mostly just went around murder hoboing everywhere. It was really fun times, honestly. And then of course I played Oblivion and spent ungodly amounts of time in Skyrim. And with Fallout I was introduced to the series with Fallout 3, fell in love with the concept, not so much with the insects, and I have played each installment outside of 76, as I wasn't really interested in strangers being part of my game. So the mix of Fallout and Skyrim in space really intrigued me, as a space is a setting I really enjoy. But what I got was not quite what I was envisioning. So let's talk about if Starfield was worth playing. Like with every Bethesda game, you make your own character. They went with a silent protagonist this time around, and the character creation offers you some neat traits to define who your character is, or was before things happened. Were you a bounty hunter? Are your parents alive? Do you have a weird yellow-haired fan chasing you around? Each of the traits are neat. My favorite was having parents because they just like to show up in the most interesting places. And my diplomat background did at times give me some unique dialogue options. And with the character created, you enter a story which I found to be alright. The main story is fine. It managed to hook me in with some intrigue early on, as I touched the mysterious artifact in the prologue, causing me to see mysterious visions. This vision and artifact led me to join an organization, investigating the peculiar artifacts and the mysteries of the universe. Or at least, that's what I thought, with how they explained the organization. Though, oddly enough, I did not manage to find anywhere people had not gone before. The tutorial part of Starfield feels longer than the other Bethesda games, though in their defense it does have a bit more to cover, as it has to explain the whole space travel system. Overall, it does a decent job getting you to your first major city, where you are finally set free to do pretty much whatever you want. Be it following the main story, looking into the side factions, exploring random planets, or grabbing a ship and trying to be a pirate. The side factions are alright. I did like some more than others, and I felt one was notably missing. Let's just say I have a feeling that one is probably gonna show up in a DLC, and I think that is quite sad. But each faction has its own decently interesting story. There are 4 main side factions to explore, each showing different aspects of the universe like piracy, law enforcement, corporate espionage, or warfare. I found them to be passable, though one was extremely frustrating with its obnoxious amount of loading screens needed to turn in missions to different people, which I felt hampered the flow. Talking about those loading screens, Bethesda has updated their creation engine to, I believe, Creation Engine 2, making the game feel noticeably more stable, and I noticed much fewer bugs than I have in previous games. But the way they chose to update the engine and how they designed the game makes it feel outdated. One notable thing being the loading screens. There is no real dynamic loading like in most modern games. We are still dealing with the system of loading into a city, to then walking to a door to load into the pub. And the same comes with space travel. You don't take off or land your ship on a planet. There is a cinematic that does that for you. In space, if you want to land on a planet, you must select your landing zone from a menu, so you can then be loaded onto the planet. If you want to travel to another system, you must load to go there as well. Need to go to a space station? Well, that will be loading screen to travel to the station, then a 30-second or so flight to the station, followed by a loading screen and cinematic of your ship docking at the station before you can get into it. And if you're exceptionally lucky, you might find that the station is split into 2 parts, so you will have a second loading screen somewhere within it. I don't usually mind loading screens, and playing the game on SSD made the loading screens pretty fast, but this felt excessive, and it made me not really want to travel if I could avoid it. And now you can go to any of the planets in the game and land on it wherever you want. When you do, it will generate a map for you to wander around, and there will always be something on the map. Some structure, probably some enemies, and you will see ships from time to time land or take off. In the many times I tried it, I never managed to find a place that was just empty. But I also never really found a place that was interesting. Bethesda has always been really good with crafting the environment and making interesting stories of dungeons. And here with the procedural generation, it just isn't working out as well. And it kind of made me just feel like I was wasting my time exploring anywhere outside of the handcrafted areas. Not that the handcrafted areas were that great either. I was left disappointed with the places I went to. I felt the cities were kind of soulless. They each had their own identity, a story, but I never felt it really reached any further than a basic visuals or a theme the city was going for. It kinda just felt artificial, which was partially because the NPCs just weirdly stare at me in most places. You see, there are NPCs that you can talk to, which are the regular Bethesda NPCs, and then we have the filler NPCs. And those cannot be interacted with pretty much at all, but they do like to stare at you like really creepily, and I don't know why. But wherever I went, I kinda struggled to point out exactly what the issue was, but I always felt like I was walking onto a set, rather than into an area people were living in. And one of the biggest points is actually because the area is static. One of my favorite things about Bethesda games has always been how the NPCs have their own lives. They have their own schedule they follow. But not in Starfield. The main characters you can speak to, they don't go anywhere. Part of what made me love the previous Bethesda games is that the world felt so alive, because the people within it, they had a schedule they followed, stores opened and closed during certain times, characters eat, sleep, interact, and not every character has to have like a huge complex schedule, but they have a schedule, even though it's just going to sleep somewhere and then waking up to go and work on a farm. Outside of 3 characters related to a quest, I don't think I found anyone following any sort of a schedule. They simply stay where they are forever, doing the same thing unchangingly. Now, one thing they did really well is the view. This is a pretty game. The skyboxes are beautiful, and space looks amazing. The little flying around you do was neat. I did not enjoy the fighting in space, mostly because usually the fight started well within gun range, and I felt it was less of a fight of skill and more of just who has the stronger weapons. I think the biggest failing there is actually there is just one difficulty setting instead of separating gun combat and space combat, because the difficulty I would have preferred for each is just vastly different. But what I enjoyed probably most was building my ship. Bethesda made a really nice menu to basically slot your ship together like puzzle pieces, requiring you to balance weight and thrust, fuel load, and of course pick your weapons and shields. There are several companies in the game that sell ship parts, and each one has their own aesthetic, including interior differences. Sadly, I could not find any way to preview the interiors in-game, so I ended up having to watch some YouTube videos to see which version I preferred. But I found the interiors really neat, and I like that while they were similar, they also aesthetically fit the concept of their companies, and giving you the option to make a ship that fits you more. And it's good that you're not limited to one company. You can take any pieces from any company and slot them with the pieces from another one. So you can slowly build the ship of your dreams, and the game will really try to make any ship you make work, which can apparently lead to some hilarious results, as I've seen people make just crazy things online. I am not very creative, so for some reason mine tended to just look like a weird turtle. But at least I could make it pink, which I thought was really nice. And the ship ends up being a huge part of your character. I really enjoyed the starting ship I got through the story, so I never really got rid of it. I kept on just expanding it and updating it through the story, to the point that it really wasn't the same ship by the end as it was at the beginning. And I had fun finding designs others had made online to try to copy. My only gripe with the system is that the interior modules have several places they can link together, and the game decides for you where the doors are gonna be, meaning the logical layout I had made in my mind did not really match what the game decided to do. But overall I think the shipbuilding system was my favorite in the game, as it became my character's home and a huge part of my character's identity. Now the settlement system also returns. It's a downgraded version of the Fallout settlement system, and it feels really pointless. It's mostly for resource gathering and a place you can send your crew members and pay off your bounty and such. But overall I feel they could have just as well skipped out on the whole settlement system. But it is there if there's something you're interested in. Now the ship is your way to fast travel to different worlds or space stations. Most of the game time you will spend with your feet planted on the ground, either within a station or on a planet, as you travel around either one of the major settlements, or going through a dungeon, or just wandering somewhere to see what the place of interest is that is marked on your map. Though honestly I never found these to be really worth it. You will be forced to travel with a companion for at least part of the game, though I found it to be alright. They are diverse enough in personalities, and I honestly wish they had been fleshed out a little bit more, and that they had more thoughts on the story, especially during the later half of the game. Now each of the main companions has their own quest line, and are a romanceable option. Overall, the people of Constellation I found to be a fun group. There was no companion I strongly disliked, but none I really connected with either. There are other people you can get on your crew from around the world, but I found them even less interesting than the Constellation members. Though I did find it amusing how much the companions like to nag you for doing anything, even vaguely not lawfully good, or if you're encumbered with items, which I am often as I am a bit of a loot goblin, they nag you about it, which can become quite frustrating at times. Especially because the encumberment system is way more forgiving in this game, as instead of it forcing you to walk, it just makes you use up your oxygen faster. And later on I had a way to just basically replenish my oxygen, so being encumbered wasn't a huge amount of issue, at least as I was heading back to my ship to like unload stuff. But having my companion nagging me the entire time did get quite frustrating. Now finally, let's talk about gunplay and stats. The combat in the game is very Fallout-like. Outside of the VAT system, of course, the gunplay felt fine. There is an alright variety of weapons, and I felt like I could take on pretty much any challenge. So the game has basic stat system based on how you build your characters. But the most important leveling system is in the skill tree. There are 5 skill trees with 82 skills in total. Each time you level up, you can put a point in one of these skills. And far too many things in this game are locked behind skill trees. For example, do you want to use a jetpack you were given through the main story? Which is something I recommend because I found the jetpack to be just silly fun. Well, then you have to put a point in the boost pack training in the tech tree. Behind other skills are more logical things like weapon crafting or more advanced shipbuilding, but also some things that felt kinda important to the story and was not explained too well that I had to obtain from the skill tree, like the ability to target certain parts of my enemy ship in their version of sort of a VAT system in space. And finding out later on that I needed something got a little bit annoying because gathering up the points and finishing the challenges caused me to have to basically pause my progression of the story so I could sort out what I was missing. So you can put 4 points into each skill, making it stronger or giving you more abilities related to it. But to be allowed to do that, you must first finish a little challenge related to the skill in question. So for example, if you take the boxing skill and want to focus on hand-to-hand combat, your skill challenge will be to kill a certain amount of enemies in unarmed combat. I felt these usually made sense and were kind of fun. Each skill tree is split into tiers and you need to put a certain amount of points into the tree before a new tier opens up. And while I found the system to be interesting, it could do with a bit more work. Because leveling isn't exactly fast, and some of the skills can be an absolute pain to obtain. And while you don't have them, they stop you from using such things as better quality ship parts. There are way more skills than you can reasonably get in a single playthrough. As different from previous Bethesda games, this one is made with New Game Plus in mind, allowing you to carry over the skills and to expand on them. I still think just giving the player more skill points as they level, or maybe calling out some of the skills in the tree, would have been really nice. New Game Plus works really well. They actually explain why it happens, which is actually quite interesting. And there are like some differences between each playthrough that can be a little bit funny, and even some different dialogue options. So New Game Plus does bring new things to the game. I did really enjoy parts of Starfield. I found boosting around on my jetpack super fun. I really enjoyed some of the faction stories, and I really liked the shipbuilding. But I also found many game design choices to be either frustrating or just outright confusing. Like, why are the city maps like this? This makes no sense and is absolutely useless. And why does the camera zoom into the face of the person I'm talking to just to stay static there the entire conversation, when they've shown they can do a dynamic dialogue camera in Fallout 4? And for a game about exploration, why can't I dive underwater? For every good thing, I felt like I was finding 3 things that were just poorly made or made no sense. And that's really sad, because I love Bethesda games, and I was sure I would love Starfield, but I don't. I honestly got bored of the game. It didn't give me that joy of exploration the other games have had. I didn't really manage to connect as well to the characters as I wanted, and I'm someone who relatively easily absolutely falls in love with every side character in games. But honestly, I just found it boring. So is Starfield worth playing? For me, it wasn't. At the moment, it's not a game I can genuinely recommend. Or at least not right now. I think if Starfield is something you're interested in, I would wait until 2024, as sometimes early next year, the developer promised to make an update dealing with some of the quality issues, including the city maps. This is also when the creation kit is supposed to come out, and that is the time when the modding community can step in and hopefully make something with the game. But as is, the game just isn't worth it. But that's of course my opinion. What do you think? Have you played Starfield? Did you enjoy it? And then what was your favorite part? And if you have not tried it, do you think this is a game you're interested in trying out? Let's talk about it in the comments, and while you're down there, do the good YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all that. On this channel we talk about video games. It is a lot of fun. But whatever you do, I hope you have a lovely day.